Good morning. Today is the last day of July, 31st of July, 2022. Let's set our aspirations, set our intentions, make aspirations by saying the Four Immeasurables prayer. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. So we're going to meditate, and I'll read from a book, and then we'll answer some questions. For those of you new, if you don't know the basic technique that we do here, it might be a little tricky. So if you go to Meditation with Michael Imperioli, YouTube, there's the first two classes of this year, the first two classes in January 2022, there's videos with detailed review explanation of the basic technique here. Most of you are regulars, so I don't do this review week after week because it gets, it takes up time that we can use for other things. Maybe we'll do one soon, just to keep that up. And it's always good to work on, specify fundamentals and things like that. But without further ado, why don't we meditate and then we'll read and talk and stuff. Maybe we'll do a bit longer today, meditation, okay? Let us start with the 9 purifying breaths. We start with the right hand, the thumb pressing against the base of the ring finger. We make the Vajra fist, as they call it. And with the index, we go, with the right index finger, we go to the left side. Remember to hold the side of your arm here, elbow. Breathing into the right subtle body channel. There's 3, blue in the middle, white on the right, red on the left, and men, vice versa. The breath is going down, up through the head, down through the back, joining at around the navel. The 3 channels join. So that's where you're taking it in. Hold, and then switch to the right nostril. Exhale. When working with the white channel, that kind of corresponds to the negative emotion of anger. So when you're breathing out, you're clearing out the anger, and you're breathing in purified air of the antidote to anger, which can be patience or kindness, loving kindness, compassion. When the switch, left hand to the right nostril. I'm going into the red channel. Same thing, we're breathing it up and down, joining at the navel, holding. The red channel corresponds to attachment, desire, things like that. We're breathing out the negative clinging emotions that poison is associated with, and breathing in generosity and contentment, things like that. Humility. Move to the center of the blue channel. You can put your hands on your knees, breathing in through both channels, going up through the head to down the back, joining at the navel, holding, breathing out through the blue. The blue is the wisdom channel. Um, and that corresponds to seeing the truth, seeing things as they are and not in our deluded state of dualism, and not realizing the empty nature of things, empty of inherent existence, meaning things are not as they seem, as solid as they seem. Really corresponds to the view of Buddhism, like interdependence, impermanence, emptiness of inherent nature, those things, non-duality. On the final breath, we're going to breathe out through the crown of our head, crown chakra, merging our consciousness with space, and we take that right into our meditation. Relax. Settle. For those of you who've been doing this a while, have your mind look at your mind. Have your mind check in to see what your mind is doing. Use your mindfulness and awareness to focus and look at what your mind is doing, what you're thinking about. And when you see what you're thinking about, leave it where it is. Let it go. Almost imagine it just like settling to the bottom. And breathe. We must keep repeating that technique, if you will, right? Keep repeating the technique of mind looking at mind, awareness looking at the display in the mind, what's going on in the mind, how these thoughts just continually arise. And as we know, they arise out of emptiness, out of the mind. They dissolve back into the mind, and they don't stain the nature of mind. They don't really alter it, and they can be recurring thoughts that are continuous for minutes, hours, days, years. But once they go, they're gone until they arise again. We can focus on the breath if we need that support. The place where the breath moves in and out of the nostrils. And when we become aware that we're thinking, when the mind is looking at mind and is aware that it's thinking of plans, of past, even of present conditions, discomfort, temperature, noise, we go back to the breath, put our attention back on the breath. Or we imagine it. The thought has arisen like a cloud in this completely spacious, empty, limitless, clear blue, luminous clarity. I'll go back to that later, those two words. And it dissolves back into it like a cloud. Think of a cloud, how it arises from the sky and dissolves back into it. And the sky is not altered at all by the clouds arising or its dissolving. Back to the breath, mind looking at mind. Don't judge the thoughts, don't follow the thoughts, don't label the thoughts. Just become aware of them, leave them where they are, like you're just lightly touching it, and then watch it dissipate. Or just settle, you'll see with practice that when the mind becomes aware of itself and aware of what it's doing, there's a natural following of the dissipation when you practice enough and you work with your mind enough. The awareness does it, almost. The awareness itself, rather than a technique of, okay, now I'm imagining a cloud, which you should do now if you need that, or go back to the breath. With practice, you'll see that awareness does the trick, that the awareness itself is the technique. And if you really want to take a little step further, you can say, well, what exactly is that awareness? What does it feel like? Don't get caught up with what you're not getting or what you're not doing or your failure of doing it. Just do it. That's all. There's no judging. There's no bad meditator, good meditator, bad meditation, good meditation. All we are doing is working with our mind. That's really all we're doing. We're not doing Buddhism, really. We're not doing spirituality. We're not doing religion. We're working with our mind. And as you practice and as you're meditating today, and as you touch and taste that calm and that clarity and that peacefulness, have faith in that it's real. It's probably why you're here, what brought you here. Mind looking at mind. by very quickly. Um, let's keep going for a few more minutes. We're working with our mind because your mind is going to be with you for a long time. Or you're going to be with your mind for a long time. For all time, probably. Mind looking at mind. What is your mind doing? I just noticed I'm thinking of my morning tomorrow. What I have to do, and then let that go. It's almost as if you're focusing your attention on the place, if you can call it a place, where the thoughts arise in the mind. I mean, it's not a real place, obviously, but it's almost something you have to almost visualize. You know, you'll have your own interpretation of what that seems like visually. It's not really a visual thing, it's the place where thoughts arise out of the emptiness and spaciousness of the mind. It's very similar to sky and cloud. Okay, so that was like almost 20 minutes of meditation. Seemed like went by very quickly. Um, so I'm going to read from a book called Luminous Clarity by Kenshin Thrangu. I think Nick may have a photo of the book's cover. If you do, you can put it up now. But this is a bit of an advanced text, but we're approaching 2 years in this class. Um, and I think it may be good for us to challenge ourselves. You know, some of you have been here for quite a long time. And all it is working with the mind. You know, that's really what it's about. Um, this is the book. I don't know if you can see that luminous clarity. Kenshin Thrangu. Okay, I'm going to read a little bit and we'll talk about it after. You can write if you have questions, which I'm sure you will. First, what I'm going to talk about is, and they go together, faith and devotion. But you know, those words, for those of us who come from certain types of religious backgrounds, those two words can bring very mixed, um, uncomfortable feelings, negative associations, especially for those of you who are not too familiar with Buddhism. Devotion and faith can kind of feel a little, if you don't really know a lot about Buddhism, like a cult-like kind of thing here. I'm not talking about faith and devotion to Buddhism per se. Because Buddhism, and I just read a quote by Zan Sarkensey, someone we've talked about here many times. So I encourage you, if you are or not familiar with him, to read some of his books, see some of his teachings online. Talks about how Buddhism, Dharma is the teaching. The three jewels when we talk about Buddhism is Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Sangha is like the community of Buddhists, congregation, if you will. Dharma is the teachings. Is a ship. The Dharma is a ship, right? To get us from our deluded mind, our place of suffering, dissatisfaction, you know, consumed by worldly concerns and out of the ego and ambition, all those things. To get from that place to enlightenment, realization, all those adventitious stains cleared away, as they call it, by adventitious stains, the clinging to negative emotions that support, reinforce, reify the ego, right? So the Dharma is the ship. Once you get to the destination, you don't need a ship anymore. You're at, you know what I mean? You're at the destination. So when we talk about devotion, the destination is the nature of our own mind. Now, we have reverence, we have respect for the Dharma, of course. The Dharma is our medicine. And without that, you're not going to get to the other shore, right? But the devotion really comes from is almost a devotion to that nature of mind. So even though we talk about devotion to our lamas and to the teaching, ultimately you're talking about devotion to the nature of your own mind, because that's where they're taking you. So that may help you to get over the stumbling block of feeling like you have to give up your ego. You're just you're going from one blind faith to another blind faith. You're just using Buddha or the Dharma as some kind of placebo or some kind of narcotic, opiate of the masses, as someone said. So this may help you not to look at things that way, at least for now, you know. In the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, which Vajrayana Buddhism is one of the vehicles. I'm not going to get into what that is because it's very complex and you really need a teacher for that. And like I always say, I'm a fellow student. But much of Tibetan Buddhism is grounded in Vajrayana Buddhism, and devotion is devotion and Vajrayana Buddhism are inseparable. There's no Vajrayana Buddhism without devotion. And the devotion, yes, it's to that nature of mind and the aspirations for realization, so you could be of benefit to all beings like a Buddha. But for now, until we're at that shore, in our tradition, we have devotion to our Lama. It's not cult worship that we worship the ground the Lama walks on. The Lama may even have faults, which we'll read in this. But we know that the nature of the Lama's mind is Buddha. The nature of our mind is Buddha. But it's the Lama who is on the boat with us, right? The Lama is the one who's bringing us on the boat and accompanying us until we get to the other shore. Because without that, without the Buddha, without the teachings, there's no ship, right? So this may be getting a little bit like fuzzy, but what I'm trying to say is don't be afraid of devotion. Don't be afraid, use your wisdom. You're not giving up your ego. You're not going to just, blindly follow and give up your sense of right and wrong or things like that. But devotion to and faith in the liberation of your own mind. I don't know how else to put it, so I'm going to read from here. I think it's very important, though. Lucidity, non-conceptuality, and non-distraction are how we practice even placement in the actual practice of meditation. The most important condition for progress in both meditation and post-meditation, which we'll get into, is faith and devotion. Faith and devotion are necessary to allow our practice to develop, to allow our experience to increase. But even more than that, faith and devotion are fundamentally necessary for our practice, because without faith in and devotion to the Dharma, we are not going to practice. The first and foremost object of devotion is the Dharma itself. If we have the attitude that the Dharma is what we need for this life, and to ensure our welfare in future lives, and that it will be of benefit to ourselves and to others, to the extent that we believe that, we will practice and achieve the result. That's really what I'm talking about. If we don't have faith, and instead think, quote, this Buddhist practice seems to be some kind of strange outgrowth of Indian culture, unquote, or maybe these are just the beliefs of some old lamas, end quote, then we won't practice because we don't believe that there's any point to it. To practice, we must believe that there is something to be realized, and that the methods that we have been taught will enable us to realize it. If we have faith and devotion, then we will practice. And with practice, we will achieve realization. The second object to have faith and devotion is in the root and lineage gurus, because we might have the attitude, and guru has such a negative connotation in the West, the word guru. It just conjures up kind of, cliches and worse, like cult-like kind of leaders and things like that. Guru's a teacher, that's all, Look at it like that. They use that word because it's an Eastern word, and they use it in their teachings. we might have the attitude, the Dharma in and of itself is all very well, but I must say that this lineage is not very inspiring. When I was talking about in Tibetan Buddhism, Vajrayana Buddhism, that doesn't really exist without devotion, that's what I'm talking about, the lineage, because why I always encourage, if you are really interested in this and want to take it further, by taking refuge, becoming a Buddhist with an authentic Lama from an authentic lineage, you become a part of that lineage. There's a direct lineage line from you through your teacher to their teacher, his teacher, her teacher, all the way to Buddha Shakyamuni 2,500 years ago. And there's something very important to that. We're not just making this up as they go along. There's lots of self-help books, I'm not going to mention any names, that are kind of take a little of this and a little of that, a little Buddhism and a little bit self-helpy kind of things and psychology, and they come up with this flavor of the month, some new way to think of the mind. This is an authentic lineage that goes back 2,500 years, that many people have followed, many people have achieved realization and enlightenment over this time. Why not go to the source? That's what I always say. The Dharma, we might have the attitude, the Dharma in and of itself is all very well, but I must say this lineage is not very inspiring. If we have that attitude, then our reservations about those who have practiced and transmitted the meditation methods are going to seriously reduce our belief in the practice itself. These reservations about the lineage cut us off from trust in the Dharma. That is not to say that our teachers have no faults. They may have faults, but the faults they have, if our teachers are genuine, do not corrupt the message of the Dharma. Not every teacher is fully enlightened. There are probably very few who are, but there are some who are. But the fact that a teacher is not fully enlightened does not mean that that doesn't exclude them from being very beneficial to you or transmitting the authentic Dharma to you or becoming an object of refuge to you. The confidence that we need to have in them is that understanding that if our teachers are genuine, that they do not corrupt the message of the Dharma. If we have that kind of confidence in the practice and in the transmission of Dharma, we will be diligent and achieve our goal. So 2 years into this class, we're talking about devotion. I think if that's something we introduced right at the beginning 2 years ago, it probably would have scared a lot of you off. It probably wouldn't have mattered as much. It would have been maybe confusing. It would have been difficult to hear. But those of you who have been doing this a while and you have a very good foundation of practice and a taste of, the Dharma and the teachings and the nature of mind and starting to kind of have some understanding of what that is. And if this is becoming very important to you, well, this is the path. That's what we talk about. So if you really want to, and I'm not saying this because I want more Buddhists in the world. I definitely want more people in the world who are working out with their minds. You don't have to do it through Buddhism. I have just found it to be an effective path. But if you are inspired to, I encourage you to take that, take it a step further. Find a teacher, take refuge, cultivate devotion, those things. Now we'll talk a little bit, I'm going to read a little bit, short section on the practice of post-meditation. Post-meditation is everything you do off the cushion. Eating, sitting, sleeping, engaging with the world and with other people, other beings. In addition to the practice of meditation, it's a practice of post-meditation. The practice of meditation itself is not enough because no matter who we are, we have things to do. And we're going to be spending a lot of time doing them off the cushion. Even if we're diligent in meditation, if we don't do anything about our state of mind in post-meditation, we're not going to progress, because if we're diligent in meditation but let our mind wander the whole time in post-meditation, then our post-meditation will undo whatever is achieved in meditation, meaning you know, you can sit and you can have some kind of stability in your meditation, and you can work with your thoughts and have moments of, you know, being in that spacious kind of nature of mind and things like that. And then you go outside and you know, push someone out of the way to get, you know, to get the next subway train or something like that. You know, you lose all kind of awareness. You lose all that spaciousness. You return to the clinging of the ego, and well, now I'm functioning in the world. I'm not on the you know, meditation cushion. So these things have to go hand in hand, right? So we're starting to bring this awareness to life. And a lot of it's about being brutally honest with ourselves. In every exchange with other people, everything we do. And we're not going to have, like, of course, we're not going to have 100% success with that, of being mindful in every single choice we make and thought we have and impression and interaction. But when you start to really practice, and you start to make practice, you know, a regular part of your life, you know, every day or several times a week or whatever, and you start reading, studying, and all these things, it naturally starts to unfold that way. So in the midst of life, when you're online waiting for your coffee, instead of getting impatient and angry, or maybe, you know, the impulse is there, and normally you would get impatient and angry and maybe say something, or maybe, you know, just be cut off and, you know, be frozen, solidified by that emotion. You can bring some spaciousness to a situation where normally you'd be dominated by that kind of impatience, right? A little bit of awareness. You know, life is not going to fall apart if I have to wait 2 more minutes for my coffee, or if this person's chatting with the person in front of me. You know, what I mean. So starting to bring mindful awareness to many situations, most situations, all situations. And awareness and wisdom as well, the wisdom to know what is actually happening. Am I biased in this situation? Is it somebody I'm in love with, somebody I love? Is it my child, and I have a different kind of criterion on what I accept or reject? You know, that's the wisdom. It's not just looking at it, it's also the understanding of how our ego, how our mind, conditioned mind, you know, which is not the nature of mind, the conditioned mind, the you know, ego-driven mind, how it operates. And I'm not talking about ego being bad. Let's forget that for now. Let's just say what is. Let's just work what is there. Say, my ego's always in the... It is what it is. That's why we're here. If we were already on that other shore and Buddhas, we wouldn't have to sit in a meditation group chat or whatever, you know, group session. So let's not be so judgmental of these things. Let's just look at it. Let's just try to understand what's going on. Let's not be so moralistic about it. I shouldn't think that. I shouldn't lust after that. I shouldn't desire that. I shouldn't be angry at this. I shouldn't be ignorant of this, you know, ignoring that. You know, let's just look at it and see if we can have a moment of clarity, or luminous clarity, like they say, where we can, where what follows in mind, speech, physical action is a little bit more in tune to what we're talking about here, why we're here in the first place, what we aspire to as human beings. Let me continue with this. It's almost done here. On the other hand, we can't try to turn post-meditation into meditation. We can't attempt to remain in the same physical and mental state as in meditation, because we have things to do that make it post-meditation. We're not sitting on a cushion when we're on, you know, when we're walking down the street, obviously. The solution is to attempt to carry the awareness and mindfulness achieved in meditation as much as possible into our post-meditation activities, into life. Obviously, there is some difficulty in carrying meditation into post-meditation, so that from time to time we'll lose track of it and become confused. But at least we won't become confused intentionally. We won't be thinking, now I finished meditation, I can let my mind wander. Well, we don't have to say that because your mind will wander anyway. That's what it does. But because if we don't try to maintain awareness in post-meditation, then from the end of one meditation session until the start of the next, tomorrow, 3 days from now, next Sunday, there will be one whole uninterrupted period of distraction, which is basically how we've, lived our whole life and lives. And often the moments where you're not distracted are like peak moments of when very intense things happen, surprising things happen, shocking things happen, very extremely pleasurable or extremely disturbing things that just kind of like drop that train of thoughts, and just you're kind of just left. Usually they're just a glimpse, and there's no root to them for us to kind of work with and hold on to and cultivate and make it a bigger space for us to occupy. Instead of that, we try as much as possible to bring what is achieved in meditation into our post-meditation. When we do so, each of these two parts of our life will enhance one another, and we will make progress. So good meditation helps post-meditation. That's obvious, right? Working in meditation helps your post-meditative life. But also, this is good to know, mindful post-meditation helps bring about good meditation. So like if you are... if you are bringing awareness into post-meditation, into your life, and you start to be able to free yourself, liberate yourself from negative emotions, not act on certain negative impulses and things like that, that experience, I don't know exactly how to put this, but that experience creates a certain energy, if you will. It's almost like you start, Garchen Rinpoche talks about that, like you start with this little tiny little birthday candle flame, and you're almost turning that into a giant like bonfire of awareness and mindfulness. So when we can catch that and we liberate a negative emotion, that flame of clarity and awareness, mindfulness gets bigger. There's a interplay between post-meditation and meditation, and bringing meditation into our lives and has a feedback back from your life into meditation, if that makes any sense. Okay, well, let's go to a few questions if we have them. As a medical cannabis user, I often meditate after consuming, though I do meditate sober-minded. Personally, I find that it helps my practice, but I've heard it be called cheating, whatever that means. Medical cannabis, making the assumption that you have a medical issue that you need cannabis for. So obviously, if your doctor has prescribed that, then that's important, and you need to do that. I've never heard any great Lama recommend the use of cannabis, so that's my experience. I'm not even going to comment further on that. So I would, if you need medical cannabis for a medical condition, I don't dispute that. Facing hospitalization and an upcoming surgery this week. Is it okay to try to meditate in the hospital? I can't get my mind to think of anything else. Well, yeah, like I said, this is a good question because it's what we're talking about, post-meditation. Your post-meditation this week is going to be surgery. That's your post-meditation world, right? So bringing mindful awareness to this, you can't get your mind to think of anything else, but we don't want your mind to think about meditation. Meditation is not really thinking, right? It's awareness. They're two different things. So if you just try to bring, what you're practicing here, that level of mindful awareness, and see what that does. See what that does as you approach this upcoming surgery, when you go in there. Instead of instead of me giving you things to think about or suggestions, maybe just try to bring mindfulness. It's going to be very hard, right? The bigger the thought, the more charged the thoughts are. All right, some of us have desire for certain things, anger at certain things, you know what I mean? The more, Shenpa is a word, I think in Tibetan, they use that word Shenpa, which is like that, clinging to emotion. It could be anger, it could be pleasure, it could be a lot of things. People have it for candy. People have, for hatred of, a political party or whatever it is. And you go from 0 to 100 and inflamed with emotion, right? Man, facing a surgery is gonna be a very sticky thing. The fear, basically, fear of mortality, fear of pain, fear that you're not gonna be the same anymore, fear that it could go wrong. All those things that are natural to have those kind of fears in surgery. It's scary. If you can apply, mindfulness and see if you can work with those thoughts and notice them, let them go. They're just thoughts. You're doing everything you can do right now. Obviously, you're having surgery because you need it, so hopefully this is going to, be very beneficial to you and extend your life and, make your life better. That could be the wisdom that you apply rather than just be consumed by the fear. But, work with your mind as much as you can. Use it as a everything can be, I should read this, anything can be taken on the path and be used as practice, and that's an important thing. I lost my page because he talks about taking another thing that can help enhance our practice is the aspect of practice called bringing things onto the path. Sometimes we experience physical illness, sometimes great unhappiness. Sometimes we have overpoweringly strong, disturbing emotions, and eventually we are all going to die. All of these situations pose challenges to our practice, and we can respond to them with special methods. The way that we relate to physical illness in the context of this practice is called taking illness onto the path. In this technique, we look at the sensation of the pain or the symptom of our illness in the same way that we look at the nature of our mind. By doing so, we see the pain's emptiness. Emptiness, we're not talking about absence or disappearance. We're just talking about empty of inherent existence, meaning it's a very subjective experience that we're, and it's something that's impermanent and temporary, while it may not cause the sensation to disappear, the pain to disappear will make it less overpowering. In other cases, we experience mental unhappiness, intense regret, sadness, and so forth. In the same way, we look at the nature of that state of mind, the nature of sadness, for example, and the thoughts that make it up. When we see its emptiness, it starts to dissolve. Emptiness also can be the impermanence. Emptiness is that we are seeing it just from this limited, very point of view. It's not the whole giant picture. And the fact that it is subject to change. This technique is called taking joy and misery onto the path. So we also look at our mind when we are so intoxicated by joy that our mind gets out of control and runs wild and we can't stop thinking about it. In general, whenever thoughts arise, we look directly at their nature and perceive their emptiness, and this is called taking thoughts onto the path. There are also special techniques for preparation for death so that the dying process will be less difficult. These techniques will also help us after death in a practice called taking death onto the path, which we're not going to go into. That's very complex and complicated, but it is something that is taught. Okay, I hope that helps. You know, there was a time before I was a Buddhist, before I started going to teachings, about a year before, I was going through an extremely, extremely difficult time in my life. And somebody that I knew gave me the number of a Tibetan Buddhist Lama. And I didn't become a Buddhist even after talking to this person, but I called him. He was a Rinpoche in America. I didn't know him. I didn't know anything about Buddhism. And I just called him because I was so, I was suffering a lot. And he said, I can't really help you. The only thing I can say to you is that everything changes. Which didn't solve my problem. And at the time, maybe it didn't really even necessarily help me, but that situation did change. And shortly after that, it was not a problem anymore. But what I took from that is that I remember that conversation. I remember that teaching that Lama gave me time and time again when I do go through difficult times, or when people I know go through difficult times, that everything does change. Buddhism is based only on meditations and the teachings of the Lama, or are there other things to do and learn to be a Buddhist? Buddhism can be kind of really encapsulated by three things. Do no harm, do good, tame one's own mind. Buddha taught for like 50 years. And there's like 84,000 different teachings of the Buddha to address many different types of people, because not different people, their minds are in different places, they're in different places in their lives. You need certain methods to get through to different people, different types of life and things like that. So the teachings of the Buddha are very vast, but they all kind of can be condensed into those three things. So when you say Buddhism is based only on meditations and the teachings of the Lama, that's a huge thing right there. So if you invest yourself in meditation and the teachings, that's enough right there. That's or a good start at least. Devotion is a word often said in Christian churches, so I wonder why people scoff at the word when it's used for Buddhism and call it cult. Oh, not all people do, but I just don't want blind devotion. You know what I mean? That's all. I don't want you to confuse it with just like giving up. I think devotion is not something that why I didn't bring this up 2 years ago. It's something that really comes more when you prove to yourself almost that these teachings are beneficial to you. When you've studied a bit, when you've had teachings with lamas and you've used the practice in situations in your life, that brings faith, right? And it's a lot easier to cultivate devotion when you have that kind of already taste of it. When you are in post-meditation going about your daily business, do you ever fall unintentionally in a state of open awareness to the point that it interrupts what you are doing? I don't think that open awareness interrupts what you're doing. I think that is what you're describing is almost more like spacing out, because meditation is not spacing out. It's not a dull quality. That's why the name of this book is Luminous Clarity. So the mind is empty, right? Empty of inherent existence, but it's also aware. So there's, it's like spaciousness infused with wisdom. So it's not going to interrupt what you're doing. It's almost going to bring more space into what you're doing. Why is there air? I don't know. I have no idea. This may be too much for Q&A, but can you talk a bit about mantra? Mantra is I think it's defined or called something that protects the mind. Mantra uses sound. Sound is vibrations as another support, as another support in meditation. Sometimes we talk about meditation with support, like if you look at a painting of Buddha or something like that, that kind of protects your mind. It gives you something to focus on that immediately takes you to that place, that nature of mind place, that kind of like, when you look at a photo. Sometimes I look at the photos of some of these great masters, and that immediately brings that spaciousness to mind, when you, that inspiration almost. But mantra has to be given to you by a teacher. Are there any techniques you turn to in post-meditation that quickly get you back into the meditative space? Yeah. I'll give you one, for example. For me, this is something that I use. When I walk down the street or on the subway, or a lot of my examples are New York City centric, because that's where I am. A particularly good, challenging, but also, I guess, good place to practice because you're around so many people all the time. But we've been taught that all of us have Buddha nature. All of us have enlightenment already within us, and it's the adventitious stains that I was talking about that are the result of karma, that have been with us through countless incarnations and through this life, that have created these obscurations from us realizing the nature of mind and enlightenment. But the truth is, the ultimate truth is that we all have Buddha nature. So sometimes you can almost visualize all the people, when you're walking down the street, every person you see as the Buddha. That's a trick. Are there specific post-meditation activities that would help or hurt your meditation? Well, yeah, indulging in negative emotions, you know what I mean? Raging out of control, or just doing things that are, or unethical behavior, stealing, things like that, with negative selfish motivation, that'll hurt your meditation. What would help? What would help is to bring awareness into post-meditation, or that may be like a trick like I just described. I had been absent a while, ended up in the hospital after several seizures in one day. I meditated in the hospital and found my teacher, Chokyampa Rinpoche, and the teachings to be very comforting and helped me to accept my situation and make it through a rather harrowing time. Back home now, I'm more grateful and embracing meditation and daily practice than ever before. This path works. Thank you, Aaron, for sharing that. That's basically what we were talking about. Nothing is going to help your... shouldn't say nothing, because a lama, an authentic teacher probably helps more than anything. But using practice to help you through difficult situations proves it to you, as Erin just said, that she proved to herself that this path works. So using the practice and seeing the results of it builds your faith and devotion. How to be more present, mindful outside of my meditation in my daily life. One is the trick I described. I think try to really, I don't know your practice, how often you practice, how deep in the practice you go, how much you study, if you have a teacher, do you watch teachings? I think the more you commit to practice, sitting, as regularly as possible, study, pondering what you're reading, what you're studying, listening to teachings, watching teachings. There's tons of great lamas on YouTube. The more you do that, the more present and mindful you're going to be in post-meditation. How would you explain in simple terms what is one's mind? Well, interestingly enough, in Tibetan Buddhism, they don't talk about the mind. When we prostrate the three doors: body, uh, body, speech, and mind. Mind being here, at the heart. Mind is consciousness, right? Mind is Buddha. When we started this class, and if you're new here, you haven't heard me say this. Originally, this class started as a secular meditation class. We were not talking about Buddhism. We were just doing very simple meditation practice. Secular, not talking about Buddhism, and so many of you had questions about Buddhism. And I asked my teacher if we could talk about Buddhism, and he said, yes, keep the talk and the focus on the mind, because Buddha was not the name of a man, it's the name of mind. Would you please re-say the three things that encapsulate Buddhism? Do no harm, do good. Do no harm, right? So it means don't kill, don't steal, don't commit sexual misconduct, don't lie, don't slander, self-explanatory things, really, right? Do no harm. Do good. Be kind, be helpful, be generous, be compassionate, sympathetic, be a good human being. The third thing, tame one's own mind, work with the mind, which is what we're doing here. How soon is now? Very. There's a good book called The Power of Mantra by Lama Zopa Rinpoche. If any of you are interested. Lama Zopa Rinpoche is one of the great living lamas. Many good books. He has Zopa means patience, and one of his new books is called Patience. Good meditation music. I don't use music in meditation, so I can't answer that. With the constant bombardment of negative current events, how do we avoid those negative emotions in post-meditation? One answer is to really make a deep commitment to practice and study and contemplation, meditation, listening to teachings, committing to a lama, following the path as diligently as we can if we are so inspired. Another thing is to really try to balance a little bit what you take in and what you don't, and how you respond to things. When I first, right around when we started this class, it was during the election in the US, and I was on Instagram for the first time, and I got very caught up with a lot of politics, with followers on Instagram and comments and this like that. And sometimes, it could get very heated and very ugly, and sometimes I couldn't go to sleep, and I had to really find a balance between what I'm exposing myself, what I'm taking in, and what I'm giving out. Bombardment of negative current events, you can also if there's certain causes, issues, politics, politicians, things that either, you feel very passionately against or passionately for, you can get involved in certain things on a community level, on a volunteer level, and where you feel like you're part of a solution rather than just a victim to, the winds of all that, you know what I mean? How would you explain karma? Karma is, I like to look at karma as very scientific. Cause and effect. or as the physicists say, every action has a reaction. And as it applies to our life, it's something that, because Buddhism believes in continuum of the nature of mind, continuum of consciousness throughout different successive incarnations of that consciousness, and that every action of body, speech, mind has a reaction and a result. And positive actions usually have positive results, and vice versa. I don't really know how else to explain it. If anyone has any last questions, you're welcome to. Today was pretty cool. We had people from England, Scotland, U.S., Chile, Italy. Nice, it's fun that people come from different countries here. I think we are done. So let's dedicate whatever merit we generated from today's class for the benefit of all beings. Canada too, very important. Lots of people from Canada. Okay, by saying our dedication prayer. By this merit may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Thank you for being here. And Nick Solidio is our producer, who we would not have this opportunity without Nick Solidio. A big thank you for his kindness and generosity. See you next week.